Hello, fellow party people. It's Haven. Today, we're going to be reading some scary Reddit stories. I have my sister right here. She's joining us today, but she's also not because she's not doing anything. We're just recording in her room and doing nothing. Okay. Let's go to Reddit. Okay, so it started raining outside, so that's what you hear. This one is unexplainable true story that happened 15 years ago. So this happened to me when I was young. I can't remember the exact age, but I was around 13 to 14 years old. My cousin came over to me to play some video games. I heard the gate close, and because I was so excited that he's coming, I looked out from the window of my room in our yard where I saw my cousin approaching the entrance door. The spelling is already... I was on the second floor. As soon as he closed the door, literally a second later, he knocked on my door and entered. I screamed like I had a jump scare, and I was just staring at him for a while. He asked me, "Is everything okay?" Me panicking like I saw a ghost. Shouted at him, asking how he got up here so fast. He was very confused, and he told me that he has no idea what I'm talking about. He came up normally, even said hi to my mom. I sort of calmed down after half an hour, but I just couldn't erase it from my mind. Let me explain. After you enter our home, the first thing is to take off your shoes in Europe. After, you need to go through a second door that leads to the living room. From there, you go to another door that already has relatively long stairs up. And after the two corners is my door. Oh my gosh, I can't read. It's not because I can't read, like, I'm great at reading aloud. Because there's like... I tried my test. I tried to test how fast I can do the same thing, and even with not closing any doors, even without shoes and running wild, the fastest was 11 seconds. He did this in a second. Did he teleport, or did I lose a sense of time at the exact moment? Please, if you have a similar experience, share with me. It still bugs me after all these years. Okay.
I heard that and I was like,
me after
okay.
reading that story. Okay. Okay. Sneaky. Deer in the streetlight. Okay. When you go home in a city during late hours, you see some weird stuff, especially if you're walking. Now, I'm a smaller person and probably shouldn't be walking home late at night, but the bar that I work at is literally just 2 blocks from my apartment. I had never run into any trouble until the night I saw the deer. I live in one of the bigger port cities in the state, so there weren't any animals around besides the rats and the pigeons. Occasionally, you would get a raccoon or a possum near the outskirts, but I lived by the bay, so mostly what I saw was seagulls walking around like they owned the place. Seeing something like a deer, that was almost unheard of. It was late, 3 in the morning. I had a closing shift and was just heading home. The night was normal, and after I parted ways with my coworkers, I was alone on the sidewalk. I didn't mind how eerie it was walking home alone at that time. It was actually nice. I got to have that street all to myself without hardly any noise or people around to bother me. But when I turned the only corner of my walk, I wasn't alone anymore. A deer, a stag with large antlers, almost too large for its head, that were in the process of shedding. Old antler dangled from the bloody new growth, barely hanging on, yet moving as its head turned to face me. The moment I made eye contact, any thought of fleeing was gone, and I was frozen in place. In the darkness, its eyes were just empty and black, with only reflection from the streetlights marking their places. Yet, as our gazes met, it felt like it was looking inside me, examining my bones and organs. It continued to stare as its jaw dropped open, jostling at the only thing holding it in place was the skin around it, like the joints had long been forgotten. With its mouth still wobbling from opening, I let out a noise. If you ever heard a deer scream, it let out a noise. My goofy bad. If you ever heard a deer scream, you almost know almost what this sounds like. A creaking groan that strains its vocal cords the louder it got, seemingly unrelenting in its crescendo. It would have been certainly loud enough to wake up the entire block, but the lights in the buildings around me remained off as it continued to shriek. I found it within myself to slam my hands over my ears as I began to shake. The sound it made becoming so loud I could feel it rush through my entire body. As it screamed, it stepped under the street light, which glinted off the red wetness that dripped from its pointed teeth. Each step it took was a painful one, or at least it looked that way. Each tug of muscle and movement of joints was jerky, walking more like a poorly controlled marionette than a living creature. I wanted to run, but the fear kept me stationed in my cowering place, even as it drew closer. Soon enough, there was no distance between us, and it was then that the screaming stopped. All I could hear now was the strained wheezing it made every time it took a breath. Porky right now. I could feel it too, the hot air puffing down my face, crawling up my nose and smelling like rancid meat. It seemed like an eternity that I stood there staring up at it before it finally moved again. It flapped its jaw up and down, teeth chattering against each other as if freezing from its breath began to make words. It reminds me of that dog that is like, oh, I'm shaking in my boots, and they're like, feed. The single sound was a strained whisper. Oh, sorry. Strained whisper as its jaw continued to swing around while the rest of it was still and unmoving. Feed, it demanded again, though louder this time. The creaking groan started to speak the word with more of a voice and less of a whisper. Feed! It was working its way back up to screaming, starting to chant the word louder and louder each time it was groaned out. It was then my body started to move on its own, shaking and without thought as it scrambled around in my bag to try and find the granola bar. That was an unfinished sneeze. Granola bar I put in this morning before work. The moment I found it, I held it up with one flat hand, the way one would offer a treat to a horse. In that moment, it fell silent, and the glint of its eyes showed it staring at the offering. It was a small chocolate chip granola bar from some store brand I never remembered the name of, still wrapped in its packaging. The time it looked up to my hand was filled with an overbearing stillness and silence that was betrayed only by my heart pounding loud enough for it to hear. I was sure. I wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but when it lowered its lips to my hand, I was filled with a new terror from the contact alone. Its lips were wet, leaving stringy trails of saliva and blood between them and my hand. As its teeth started to tear through the granola bar, it was messy and the silly spit was ice cold to the touch, leaving a clammy feeling each time its hot breath from its nose beat down on the wet mess in my palm. Pieces of granola bar and wrapper mangled amongst the bloody drool before it began to lick the scraps away with its eye. The organ reeked as it seemed to be actively rotting, with 2 pockets of maggots brushing along my head, sometimes leaving a worm or 2 behind. That was disgusting. When it was satisfied, its mouth closed and it lifted its head. Looking past me towards the street, it let out a huff of stale air, and with crooked steps began to shamble its way to the street corner behind me. I didn't look back to see if it turned. I could just hear its clattering hoofs on the pavement, slowly growing further and further away. Only once it was completely silent did I find within myself to run the rest of the way home. I got there safe, but definitely did not sleep that night. I spent most of it trying to wash the blood and spit off of my hand, but the blood seemed to stain, leaving a web of red markings on my palm and fingers. It's been a few weeks now, and I haven't closed since. The blood stain remains on my hand, though they have faded to look like a weird birthmark than anything else. They're the only proof I have of what happened was real, but nobody has actually believed me when I told them what happened. Tonight is my first closing shift since that night, as much as I tried to get out of it, but I'll be sure to pack a granola bar just in case. The bathroom door. During elementary school, every night I hear a knock in the bathroom at exactly 3 a.m. So Mike told her mom, Mom, I keep hearing knocking in the bathroom. The mom says, just don't worry about it. The next night, Mike woke up and heard knocking again in the bathroom. And it started scaring him all night and he couldn't sleep. The next day, Dad comes home from work, so Mike told his dad about the knock in the bathroom. The dad said, I heard the same knock when I was 10, but my mom told me never open the door. Mike said, but why? And Dad said, I don't know why, but just don't open the door. Mike said, oh, okay. And Dad said, one night the knocking became even louder. Girl, who was writing this? They said, Mike. Oh, okay, Dad. One night the knocking became even louder than before and woke up everyone, so they spelled Thay. Had enough, so Mike decides to open the bathroom door, but nothing was there. But every night the knocking was still there. Period. Who or what was knocking at the door? No question mark. But we're gonna end this video here. Kiwi, say bye.
Bye.
So, it was boring, fail, but next time, I'll actually be prepared and find some actual stories that are good. Thank you for watching my video. Love you for watching it, and I will see you in another time.